Welcome to Urban Legend Crypto. This is Pedro Richey and Brett Jennings, co-host. We're here coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Pedro, how was your week, man?
You know, my week was pretty good so far.
Yeah, is business starting to pick up a little bit with real estate, or are people still not buying because of interest rates?
Yeah, I think that's the whole thing, you know.
Yeah.
Are people going to start selling? The answer to that is bohemian yes, very fast. I think people are going to get wind of what's really going on, and they're going to say, I ain't losing my retirement.
I've already had a few different sellers say to me, well, I think I'm going to list in the next month or two, and ideally I should have 6 months ago, 7 months ago, and I've lost X amount of percentage already since. I said, well, it's I can get any better. So
I don't think so. I think we're in for a world of hurt.
We are.
No matter what we look at it.
And people don't understand that even if the feds bring down the interest rate to get to the point where, I mean, I think probably around 5, some maybe 5.5, people really start jumping back in. Mm-hmm. Because that's something to the point where even sellers who have all that equity and the low interest rate are willing to sell and then buy into something else, and they'll be comfortable with 5.5, but they're not going to do that 7.5, man. You know,
you're talking about rates?
Interest rates, correct. You know.
Well, brief. You want a brief?
Yeah, I do.
So here's the brief.
Let's hear it.
All right. So in brief, the real estate market, here's what I think. I think interest rates have gone up 500% in the last year and a half-ish. I think the payment has gone up about 85%. I think the total of 992,250,000 homes has a 34 percentile of houses are without a mortgage. And out of those total, there's 12 million that don't have, that are vacant. Okay. So you've got 34% of the gross number that have no mortgage. And out of the gross number, 12 million are vacant. These are livable units, livable homes. So that tells me that although people have a 3% or lower, 14% of those are happy, a lot of those people have to sell soon. So you've got life events that happen. The first life event, and the most tragic, is people die. So they have to go to probate or a will, and they have to sell the property. The next one, people get divorced. They have to sell the property, they have to distribute the equity. And then the third one, and the worst one, is people lose their job. I see rates going up, and I see rates going into the 70s, 1970 to 1980, which rates were 12, 13%. I think that's where we're going. They printed too much money, and because of that, we are going to have to pay some way, somehow. And what's the easiest way to do it? Well, you just start making people have to sell their property. All that liquidity was going to go into the market, but it won't last long. So I say the first 20% of the people that come to market in the next few months are going to be okay, but the ones after that are the ones that are going to get in trouble. And the real quick and brief prediction, I think properties are going to drop between 25 and 30%, leaving a lot of people upset. But because of the low rates and because of the low payment, they're just the 14 percentile, and that's all I'm talking about. Those people are going to be pacified because, well, we bought it at this price, so I guess we'll be all right. It's the above 3% crowd that represents a large amount of the 250 million properties that are in trouble. I think those people are the ones that are saying, no, I'm not losing my equity. I need to get out of this. I need to do this, and I need to do that. What those are, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Completely disagree. So who's going to be putting all these homes on the market? And number two, so your theory is they're going to sell their house so they can get the equity that they can out of it to then what? Go buy a house that's at that's even more money than the one they're selling at a higher interest rate than the one that they have? That doesn't make any sense. And then as far as all the people, the millions of people that already own their house outright and have no mortgage, you're saying that almost 12 million of those are empty. Why? If you own it outright, why is it empty? And number two, even if it is empty, who cares? You own it outright.
Well, Jack Handy, I love your thoughts. Let's have you think about something.
Okay.
All right. So now, hypothetically, you own a couple homes that are free and clear, just hypothetically. Now, you're watching this market and you're taking a beating on the S&P, on crypto, on everything else. The only thing that's kind of standing right now is, and only at about 90% of the worth it was maybe 8 months ago, is real estate. You still need to pay bills. You don't want to sell your stock. You don't want to sell anything else because you're hopeful that things will get better, right? So you have two properties. They're both paid off. There's a natural thought process that, well, let's sell one, have that money work for me. We're going to buy T-bills, et cetera. And then I'll be able to pay off debt and I'm good. So that's the middle class conundrum, if you would. People that have money and are paid for. Now let's talk about real people. The people that are not making hundreds of thousands a year. Let's talk about the people that are making $80,000 and below a year, or combined income. And let's talk about their decision making. So they're also stuck because even though they're not investing like the guy that has money, they're sitting there and they're having to make higher payments for utilities, higher payments for food, higher credit card payments because maybe now they're stuck because their hours were cut at work, et cetera. So now you're looking at your equity. You're talking to your significant other and you're saying, look, Zillow's saying property values have gone down about 12%. What do you want to do? We bought this house in 2015. We've got $200,000 or $300,000 in equity, honey. What do you want to do? And that pillow talk is going to go on around the country because people are under the misnomer that because they have that kind of equity in the property that they can easily just sell, get the money, and take care of business. Now, as far as what are they going to do, my suspicion is a lot of people are going to sell and a lot of people are just going to move in with others or rent. That's what my suspicion is. I think you're going to see an exodus of all these people that own Airbnbs, for example. I think Airbnbs is going to go down the toilet. I think people that own commercial buildings like the C commercial buildings, I think they're going to try to liquidate as well. People are going to downsize. And so looking at their cap rates of what they're making now in normal rentals with rates going up and their expenses going up and the tenants being on shaky ground, I think a lot of people are just going to want to sell those people. But going back to the 80,000 and below, there's an interesting stat if you want to hear it. I've been watching a lot of people coming online and talking about the Great Depression era. And what they're saying is that if you made $3,000 to $4,000, the exact number doesn't matter, but about that much money in the Great Depression era, then that would be equivalent to making about $80,000 right now. What I find that they're leaving out of that number, Brett, is something that is blatantly obvious, and that is our taxes, what we pay in taxes. See, during that time, there was no excess taxes on gasoline.
There was no income tax, correct?
Yep. There was no, just the state level. There wasn't all these taxes that they put on all the staples that we buy. So the truth is, if you're making $3,000 to $4,000 then, you can buy a lot more with your money. So today, if you're making $80,000, it seems like a lot of money, but the truth is you're making less than the people that are at the 3,000 and 4,000 range. So I see us right now, especially going back to the average Joe Blow that has a couple $100,000 in equity, I see them rushing to the door. Not right away, but very, very soon.
So when you're talking about the expenses and utility bills and all that stuff, if we're using that theory, yes, I absolutely agree with you. A lot those people probably will sell. They'll get to a certain point where they will sell. But my statement is this: how many people do you think that is? Like, you're talking about 80,000 people making $80,000 a year that own two rental properties?
No.
Not including their own?
No, I was talking about the rich, the people that have money.
Okay. So how many, even let's use that number. How many do you think there are? Like, that's not the majority.
34% of homeowners.
3 to 4%.
34% of homeowners right now do not have a mortgage.
Okay.
I would consider them to be
But you first originally started talking about people with their investment properties.
Right.
So now there's a difference because now you're talking about their owner occupied. So that even proves my point, or my feeling even more, which is, let's talk about it being your personal property. Your alternative is that you're just going to go rent. I mean, yeah, that's some people. In fact, I met somebody at the Breathe convention right now, a VC who's selling his house in Littleton, Colorado right now. And he was on and off the phone because they were having the home inspection done. And I said, well, why are you selling? He said, number one, I should have sold 6 months ago because I would have gotten more money for it, which I do agree with you. We do agree on prices coming down some. But he was moving to Tempe, Arizona. And I said, you just need to rent, brother. That's what you need to do. Like if you are one of those people that are going to sell, I understand what you're saying as far as utilities are higher, you've got property taxes, and we're at the peak of prices as far as I feel they're going to come down a little bit. So but even with that being said, how many are willing to actually sell to then go rent? Like, I'm sure there's some, but enough to bring down homes 20 or 30%, I don't see it, because I don't see, to me, home prices come down when you just have an excess amount of buyers compared to, I should say you have an excess amount of sellers compared to the buyers that are coming on the market. I just don't see that excess of sellers.
You just mentioned supply and demand, correct? Mm-hmm. All right. So that's one of the reasons why this golden handcuffs theory of the 3% is taking hold right now. That's what the average agent is saying. They're saying, well, you know what? These people have a below 3%. Why would they? But that only is 14% of the total amount of homes. So what I'm telling you is, when people start to realize that we are in a recession, all right, when business owners start feeling the squeeze of these higher rates that they're going to have to get, all of that combined is going to start producing more sellers, okay? Right now, we have the average normal seller, which is the guy that has to sell, the probate guy, the death guy, the divorce guy, all that. That's the norm, the reload guy. However, I see people soon looking at rentals and saying, well, honey, we pay $1,800 a month. We have a 3%, but we can go rent the same house right now for $2,200 a month. Well, that's only $400 in a year. That's $4,800. So yeah, we're gonna take out a couple $100,000, and we'll pay an extra $5,000, but we're not going to have any of the maintenance cost. We're not going to have to worry of losing equity. Anything goes wrong, someone else will fix it. So when the average person starts seeing that it makes more sense to rent, that's been our historical average of why properties have gone down in history. It's when it makes more sense to buy a property where you're going to save on rent, right? And then you got the possibility of equity. Unfortunately, we've been living in this dichotomy of people expect yearly double-digit growth on equity. They expect it. It's kind of like it has to happen that way. But that's not true. The truth is the inverse, that you're living in it and the house should depreciate because the house has been lived in, normal wear and tear, until you repair it. So why is there an expectation that a house should all of a sudden be worth twice as much when you bought it from an X factor, right? From, for example, the 1980 house that you bought in 1980 is going to be worth now over $1 million today because of why? And that's what we need to answer.
I mean, should things double in price? No, that's unrealistic. You and I both know that. Why is real estate always historically been a good investment? Because it goes up in price. Why is that? I don't know. That was said a long time ago. I mean, that's a different discussion. But to get back to kind of what you're saying before, so here's the thing. At the end of the day, to me, what dictates home prices going down is an excessive amount of sellers compared to the buyers. I don't see that happening. That's based off a premise of this. Everything that you said is true. Don't get me wrong, you make valid points. But it all comes down to this, to me, at the end of the day, which is, when are they historically ever going to find that home for that price with that interest rate again? When? So even if it behooves them to save a little bit of money to sell their house and store away and then rent for a couple of years, again, when they do get back into that market, when are they ever going to find that house for that price at that interest rate again? They never will. Period.
So there is an argument that to be said that right now you can buy at a lower than it would have been 8 months ago, and you can buy the house and you can always refinance, right? I get that argument, and I use that argument sometimes. It depends on the location, right? But overall speaking, at a macro level, we are in bad shape, okay? The government has admitted, not the government, the Federal Reserve has admitted that they have printed of $12 trillion. Well, all those dollars are going to come back to roost. What that just tells me is they need to collect that the cheapest way possible. They don't want any more money in the market. So how do you make money disappear? You inflate it away, right? That's one way. But there's another way. You deflate it away. So think about it this way. Let's say hypothetically you have a $500,000 house. That's the worth of it today. But you bought it for $300,000 10 years ago, 5 years ago. It doesn't matter, right? Well, what did you really do to that property that increased the price $200,000? If someone else is willing to pay you $200,000 more for the property, people say this to me all the time. Well, I painted it. I put a new patio. I remodeled it. And I tell them, hey, that stuff is good for you, but as much as you like this green cabinet that you put up that is specially made in India, not everyone's going to like this, ma'am, sir, whatever. So you did this because you wanted to live in this particular box, this environment. That doesn't make it so that now all of a sudden people are going to pay more money. No, the reason property values go up is because the whole of the neighborhood, the land, the area is going up. Well, the only way it goes up is if people can afford to pay for it as it goes up. So what we're talking about right now is affordability. And why the payments has gone up 85%-ish, 89% in some areas, is the reason people can no longer afford to buy that $500,000 house. But watch this. If the property goes down to $300,000, now they can afford it. But here's the problem. You own the $500,000 house. And so now you don't want to lose that money because watch this. As I just mentioned earlier, if you rent for $4,800 differential of what you are as an owner, right? But yet you get to sell it and keep the $200,000. Worst case scenario is you spend $10,000 for 2 years renting, but you kept $190,000 watching how we get out of this recession. For a lot of people that have a little bit of common sense, they're going to say to themselves, you know what, this is too much of a risk. So when the gambler is playing, right, and he's had a good run. He's up a few $1,000s, right? He started with $100. There is a time where he needs to get up off that table because he's got so much money that he doesn't want to lose it. And I'm guessing that a lot of these people that invested and purchased a property to live in are excited that they think they're rich because they have all this equity. But I think what's going to happen, Brett, is all these people are going to start having these conversations as the economy gets worse. A lot of people are going to turn to all these platforms. They're going to show a decrease in value of their property, and they're going to start calling real estate agents to get true values, because who are the ones that really can tell what a property is worth other than the people that work the local market, which are real estate agents. Mm-hmm. So at the end, what I see here is there's going to be a lot more demand, which is your premise, that there has to be more inventory for the property values to go down, right? Well, the reason property values are going to go down is because a lot of the people are going to wake up to the fact that the property values are going down, and therefore there are going to be more listings. For example, Clark County, you're going to see 20 to 25,000 properties up for sale in the near future, which is going to make the property values total ridiculously bad. People are going to be fighting amongst each other to lower their property to meet the new buyer's expectation that, hey, he needs to pay for all my closing costs. Oh, and I want $20,000 off price, $50,000 off price. The inverse of how it was not a year and a half ago with lower rates.
Do you know how many people are moving here a month from California? It's just not going to happen. What you're talking about is the ideal scenario for sellers to do. Most people don't do ideal scenarios. Yes, you should sell your equity and then cash it out and go rent for a couple of years and see what happens. That's ideal. 98% of people will not do that. They won't look at it that way. They won't look at it as they're going to have the frame of mind that, yeah, right now I should, even if they say I should sell right now to preserve what value that I have, then they're going to start trying to get financing for a loan and see what the new payment is, and they're going to say, forget it, I'm not selling. That's what's going to happen. So remember when I did the clip and I said, let's start it this way. I've got another quick little story for you, kids. You want to know what that is? When everybody was coming down on me about I'm an idiot, how Sha-256 was created by the NSA. I said, here's a quick little story for you kids. Look it up. NSA created Bitcoin, or I should say created Sha-256, which is the algorithmic procedure behind Bitcoin. And everyone said, I'm crazy. I don't know what I'm talking about. One thing has nothing to do with the other. There's a lot of programs that the government's gone in on that's helped create that has no attachment to anything. And basically, I was an absolute loony to think that. And then I'm coming across Twitter, and here is a paper from 1996. And the paper was called How to Make a Mint, the Cryptography of Anonymous Electric Cash. This was written in 1996 by NSA. And you know, coincidentally, who the author of that 1996 paper about electronic cash, do you know who the author was? It was Tasuki Nakamoto. Doesn't that sound like Satoshi Nakamoto, who is the credited author for Bitcoin paper, which was in 2008? Satoshi Nakamoto is a creator or credited as a creator of Bitcoin. He came out with the Bitcoin white paper. There is a white paper, basically, that was written in 1996 about electronic cash, and the author was Tasuki Nakamoto. Doesn't that sound like Satoshi Nakamoto?
It does.
It does. And this was written by or helped with NSA that wrote part of it. So just so everybody wants to talk about, and so here's what, go back to the tweet again, I'm sorry. So the tweet basically said, the NSA invented Bitcoin, ? 1996 paper titled How to Make a Mint. 1996 paper titled How to Make a Mint, the Cryptography of Anonymous Electric Cash. Sources include the author, Takasoki Nakamoto. Who else would be, and here's another point they made, who else would be sitting on $1 million, or I should say $1 million Bitcoin in their wallet? So the thing that people need to understand about Bitcoin is the first million that were ever mined have never left the original wallet that they were mined in. There's a total of 21 million supply of Bitcoin that will ever be mined. And there's over 1 million of them sitting in the original wallet for Satoshi Nakamoto, who mined the first million Bitcoin. Those have never left the wallet. So let's say that Bitcoin is at what, $27,000 right now? Times that by 1 million, and that's how much money is sitting in that original wallet right now. Bitcoin started at 0.009 cents. It went up to $65,000 at one point in a 12 or 13 year period. You're telling me who else would be willing to sit on a wallet worth that amount of money unless it was the government? Who? And that's kind of my thing, but I just wanted to kind of let people know that everybody was coming down on me. I mean, look at the paper. And then open up the paper right there. What's it talk about at the very top? Right there. Who's the author? Lori Law, Susan Sabat, Jerry Salanis. National Security Agency Office of Information Security Research and Technology. The Cryptology Division. June 18th, 1996. That's an outline for basically Bitcoin right there. And that was written in 1996. So all those people out there that said I'm crazy and I'm loony and one thing has nothing to do with the other, right there.
Well, you are crazy.
I am absolutely insane, but listen, there was literally a paper that laid out the same premise as Bitcoin 12 years before the Bitcoin white paper ever was written and existed. And the author happens to be Takasoki Nakamoto, which sounds just like the author of Bitcoin, Satoshi Nakamoto. Are you insane? How many times do you need to have irony and resemblances? I don't know. I might be onto something.
What you're saying, Brett, is that Sha-256 was basically a government black op done by the NSA and written by a guy named Takasoki Nakamoto, which the paper was titled How to Make a Mint, the Cryptography of an Anonymous Electronic Cash, that has a link that I'll put in the description that basically says how to make cryptocurrency.
It has a whole outline for it.
And the outline is incredibly detailed.
Isn't it? Look at it.
It looks like, to be honest with you, the decoding of what we currently know as Bitcoin.
Yes.
And so what is coming to mind right now, folks, is let's say that the Greenspan of that world just happened to be, in some weird world, a master computer programmer. Wait a minute, he was. Well, let's just say that Greenspan was the first to actually come up with a digital platform for banks on that level. Wait, he was.
Oh.
Let's talk about Greenspan.
It's weird how these dots get connected, but go ahead.
This happens to coincide with Greenspan's reign. And wouldn't the collusion of government and banking, and you know what? Is that even allowed to be said, that bankers are in the government? Oh, wait. BlackRock ex-executives are sitting in the Biden administration.
Well,
Trump
not technically, but...
And now all of a sudden they're back to work at Black. Well, anyway, that's a whole nother thing. So we're saying here that the National Security Agency office is writing an outline for Bitcoin before Bitcoin became
12 years.
a thing by over a decade. So if that doesn't sound like an urban legend here in Urban Legend Crypto, I don't know what else would be an urban legend. What do you think about that, Brett? Is this an urban legend or is this real?
I think the greatest trick the good devil ever played was convincing the world he didn't exist.
So let's break that down for a second. I mean, I'm not going to leave it there. All right, guys, let's think about this. So Sha-256 came about. What year was that?
Sha-256? Sha-256. And type in Wikipedia. Literally the first thing it says is it's a set of cryptonic hash functions designed by the United States National Security Agency and first published in 2001. They are built using the Merkle Damgard construction from a one-way compression function itself built using the Davis-Meyer structure from a specialized block cipher. So long and short of it, it was created in 2001, I believe. Here's the thing, what people need to understand, which is the idea of electronic cash, the idea of Bitcoin and how it works. Satoshi Nakamoto wasn't the first person to come up with that idea. He was just the first person to be able to come up with a way to actually make it physically happen. That's the difference. So the government and NSA could have wrote this paper in 1996, and because this is just an idea. If you were to do this, this is what you would need to do, and this is how it would be composed. But that doesn't mean that the technology for it wasn't invented yet, because it wasn't, right? That's the whole reason why Satoshi Nakamoto was able to have Bitcoin succeed like it did, or part of the reason was because it was the right place at the right time with finally the right technology. He solved the double spending problem. And solving the double spending problem is something that has been around since the beginning of time, right? But he was the first person to figure out a way to actually solve that problem. That's why Bitcoin is what it is, and that's why it's took off like it has. So the government could have came out with a paper for it in 1996, but that doesn't mean they had the technology or the know-how or the know-withal to actually do that. So when they had SHA-2, or even if they had SHA, they didn't have the technology. They didn't have SHA-256 then. They had SHA-2. Or even if they had SHA-256, they didn't have the other technology that Bitcoin needs to be able to make it work, right? So you have one of the tools to make Bitcoin work, but that's all you have is one of the tools to make Bitcoin work. Bitcoin works because it was able to make something and a concept work with bringing all these different resources and technology together for the first time. And that technology simply wasn't around then.
So here it is in a nutshell. The NSA has come up with SHA-2 back in 1995. This Twitter handle, Daniel Roberts, came up with a paper that he found that was written by the NSA 1996. And it's entitled How to Make a Mint, the Cryptography of Anonymous Electronic Cash. And then in 2001, hash 256 came about. And then in 2008, we had the Satoshi white paper came out. So that's the timeline. But what I think we're all missing here is that this idea was formed and hatched in the NSA. So who stands to benefit on this? So now look at 23 years later, after SHA-256 came out, you're seeing the rollout of CBDCs, of peer-to-peer transfers within. You see the transfers that leads perfectly to the segue that you want to talk about. Can you describe what's going on with Citigroup and how they're debuting their token? So Go ahead, Brett. Talk about that.
All right. Citigroup.
It's up
So,
there for
all right. So, Citigroup came out and they're about ready to debut their own token assets. So, how it works, the bullet points are this, which is Citi Token Services is going to be for their institutional clients. Keep that in mind. It's for their institutional clients only. It basically transfers customer deposits into digital tokens. So, it'll take their actual deposits that they make, and if they want, it'll transfer into digital tokens. The point of this is to be able to let it be able to work swift with global transfers. They want the global transfers to work like Bitcoin works, which is I can send money to here in China in a matter of 10 minutes. They want it to be able to happen that way. And what they're saying is they're going to create a digital asset. That digital asset is going to be equal to what your deposit is, and it's going to be basically backed by the bank. People need to keep that in mind, which is the digital coins are going to be backed by bank promises. So people need to understand that's the difference between Bitcoin and central banks and the whole 9 yards, which is they're just doing more of the same of what they're already doing. They're not bringing any more value. They're just making it feasible for you to be able to transfer your value like Bitcoin, right? So it's still backed by the government. The government says that digital tokens backed by bank promises and processed via blockchain for immediate settlements. And another important thing is that Citigroup Service is going to create and use their own private blockchain for this to happen, which is what we've kind of got back to before with Ripple. And banks at the end of the day, like we've said, are going to use their own blockchain. They're going to rip off what's already working, and they're going to create their own blockchain and use their own blockchain. Why? Because why would they pay someone else's blockchain fees when they can use their own? Why would they trust everything that they need to trust for their business? Why would they trust that on someone else's blockchain? And why would they pay someone else's to use their blockchain? They wouldn't, is the answer.
I agree. I look at Ripple, XRP, and I've been saying this all along. I don't see XRP going anywhere. And Ripple, they are going to cut some deals with some of the banks just to make it easier for them to use their platform. They're going to make a lot of money doing it. They don't need XRP.
Nope.
That being said, with Citigroup doing their own token, and then others are going to follow suit. Here in this Citigroup debuts token bullet point, it says, parallel efforts by JP Morgan Chase and company in the same domain. So we have the banks going into blockchain to try and combat what's going on in the private sector, right? All I see here is an effort from the NSA to help the bankers get more control, to be able to come up with a currency that is digital, that in the end will be used against the population, my opinion. I think what's going to happen, they're going to be able to track and trace everything we do digitally with our money. They're going to use it to go against us with the IRS. They're going to ask us why we're buying certain goods, certain services, and in the end, they're going to see that we're paying or buying certain things that we weren't allowed it for. For example, in the future, if you buy more meat than they allowed you to be able to buy with the digital currency, they'll just shut you off. Or if you go to the register, they won't let you buy it because you only supposed to buy a certain amount of meat. I see a very dark, nefarious future if we continue down this road. It doesn't seem on the surface that this is a bad thing. It seems like it's a great thing. But in the hands of centralization, it's definitely dangerous. Decentralization, where we're not controlled and we're not told what to do with our own money, then fine. All right, I'd give it a second glance. I love Bitcoin, but outside of that, I'm not real hip on all these things that's going on with these bankers. We got anything to say on that, brother?
I've been working on a few projects, trying to come up with some pretty good ideas and develop them into project with a guy using AI. And he's a Bitcoin maxi. I mean, he started mining Bitcoin when it was 50 cents. And when he was talking to me this weekend, he had a frame of mind of this, which I think is smart. And people need to keep in mind that right now, with AI and what's happening in the world of blockchain and figuring out a use case and more importantly, like how to use AI in that, he said this to me. His whole mistake back in the day was a mentality of, well, I'm going to have to mine thousands and thousands of Bitcoin. And that's what he went about. But then, like everybody else, he sold it when he hit a certain price, right? And looking back, he said, here's the way that we need to approach the future with anything, with any endeavors, with bringing AI into our business or coming up with a project or problem solving, which is you only need to earn 1 Bitcoin a day, right? His mentality back in the day, which is right now, which is everybody thinks they need to rush in and they need to conquer all these things and do all these things. And hindsight is when you look back at the big picture, you don't need to go in and storm the goal 100 times, right? You only need to make equivalent to what he thought was 1,000 Bitcoin a day to mine. In reality, he only needed to mine 1 Bitcoin a day. And that's kind of the mentality with things. And he's very, very much into privacy and owning your own data. I think there's always going to be a market for Bitcoin. There's always going to be a market for decentralization. I don't care what the government tries to do. I don't care how the government tries to intervene. There's always going to be, even at worst case scenario, an independent market for Bitcoin and decentralization. There's always going to be. Now, would I like it to be adopted more? I would, in the sense of I would love for Bitcoin to be the ultimate store of value, because finally all the money and the value in the world can actually be backed by something, right? And it's currently not. People need to understand, since 1971, we've gone on to a fiat, which means a government-backed only money. This is the first time in civilization, in all of history, that not only a government has been backed by fiat and backed by its own money, but every country in the world right now uses fiat system. So I'm all for some sort of asset and value being backed by some sort of store of value. And I would love for that to be Bitcoin, but that's only going to come with world mass adoption. But at the end of the day, to kind of get back to this, I think there's always going to be a market, and people are always going to use Bitcoin because they're always going to understand the need for it. That's the point. It has a need and it solves a problem. That is always going to be worthy in society.
All right, there's a story. It's from Cointelegraph, dated September 18th, 2023. Crypto funds outflows reached nearly $500 million over 9 weeks. Well, Houston, we've got a problem. What it goes on to say is outflows from crypto exchange traded products, ETPs, reached $455 million over the previous 9 weeks, according to a report from an asset manager, CoinShare. Outflows, ETPs, generally indicate negative sentiment toward cryptocurrency. Crypto exchanges traded products are designed to track crypto prices. When shares of these prices fall below their target price, they sell off cryptocurrency, causing outflows. Well, the week leading up to September 18th, outflows were $54 million, capping off 9 weeks in which a single week saw Bitcoin go to 27,000.
So that's $54 million in liquidity coming out of the Bitcoin market.
Well, it's the biggest drawdown from all exchanges traded products and was responsible for 85% of all outflows from these funds. Last week, over 45 million worth of Bitcoin was sold into the market. 45 million Bitcoin was sold into the market. Funds were also not spared by a deluge of selling. They saw outflows approximately 5 million last week. So all I'm saying is, here it goes on to say CoinShares provided the United States was responsible for 47% of all outflows.
77%.
Yep, I mean to say, the United States was responsible for 77% of outflows, with Germany, Canada, and Sweden also having caused a sizable percentage of outflows. Wow.
77%.
From the U.S.
From the U.S.
Well, that goes to my point, Brett.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling you, people are starting to hurt, and they don't want, their risk tolerances are getting lower and lower, and they're going to start selling any commodity that is not performing, or they're going to start selling their properties to try to save, what they believe in as a sound investment. And if they have an extra house lying around, that's going to go to market. People that have a lot of equity, they're going to prefer to rent than to lose their equity. We're looking at, in my opinion, interesting times, to say the least.
It's been another great festive session. Pedro, you're always a worthy
Opponent.
adversary, worthy adversary to take on any issues. I love that we have a difference of opinions, but yet it's kind of the same. So, everyone have a great week. And
thank you for joining Urban Legend Crypto, where we come to you with opinion. Have a good day.